Alright, how's it going, y'all? So today I'm finally doing my full deep dive into Synology Snapshots. This is a video I've been meaning to do for a while because it is so crucial. I've done one in the past, but this one is going to be so much better. I've learned so much more, and I've gotten a lot better videos, and I'm going to do a full deep dive into Synology's best feature. This is a feature every single Synology owner should be using if they have a BTRFS volume. It is that good. There are pretty much no instances where I do not recommend people use snapshots. There's one or two, and I'll talk about those later, but if you've got a BTRFS file system, you absolutely should be using snapshots. Snapshots protect you from so many different things. They protect you against dumb deletes, ransomware, just messing up. They protect you against files accidentally getting corrupted by programs. It is so powerful and so useful that it is the first thing I set up anytime I have a new client. I always make sure they have snapshots enabled because they can be a lifesaver. What snapshots allow you to do is snapshots allow you to roll back the clock on your entire file system without actually using that much data. It uses the minimal amount of data possible just based off of the deltas. It allows you to roll back to old versions of files without really having to carry around all these massive files. Instead, it only carries around the differences from the changes. And it can be a real lifesaver. I always recommend setting this up, if at all possible, because it just runs in the background. And you will forget about it until the day you need it. And then when the day you need it, you go, oh shoot, my computer just got hacked and it encrypted all the files on my NAS. Oh hey, an employee got mad and deleted the entire file system. Or anything. It just allows you to so easily roll back to a good state of your entire file system, and it's just peace of mind. I will say, this is not a backup. You really need to be backing up your crucial files, family photos, tax documents, everything that you really rely on, but this is additional peace of mind. It is so much easier to restore from a BTRFS snapshot than a backup because a BTRFS snapshot can be restored from instantly. It is such a great feature, and I really highly recommend every single user who has BTRFS use it. Alright, and so before we get into the rest of this video, I'd like to thank Aura for sponsoring this section of the video. In 2020, 49 million Americans fell victim to identity theft, and it ended up costing them a combined $56 billion. These are not people who just fell for phishing scams or had bad passwords. 37 billion records got hacked in 2020 alone, from major social media sites, crypto exchanges, pharmacies, phone and internet providers. All these got hacked. And because of this, unless you want to completely stay offline, preventing your personal information from being leaked online might be completely out of your control. That's why I'm excited to partner with Aura, who is sponsoring this section of the video. Aura's app uses AI and machine learning to constantly protect your identity online. You simply tell Aura your email accounts, your account numbers, as well as your phone numbers, and Aura's machine learning algorithm will continuously scour the dark web, data brokers, and even public records to alert you to criminal activity fast. Aura's app also features a VPN, which allows you to stay anonymous online, even from your ISP. Someone becomes a victim of identity theft every 14 seconds. Don't be the next one. Let Aura protect you. All right, and so as part of their thing, they also will scour the dark web, as I said, and actually find leaked passwords and things. And yeah, this is the dashboard that shows it. And I only gave them a couple of my email accounts to start out with. And I already have 34 reports. And these are actually, I looked through these. Some of these are passwords I was actually using for a while, and it's quite disturbing to see your passwords that you were using in plain text just showed you like, hey, this is just online. So I would love to see if anybody can beat that record, put that in the comments below, but that is a lot. Try Aura for free for 2 weeks to see if your information has been leaked on the dark web. You can use my link down in the description. Start your free trial at aura.com/spacerex. All right, thank you so much for Aura for sponsoring this section of the video. Now back to BTRFS Snapshots. All right, and so now before we get into the nitty gritty of BTRFS Snapshots, we need to talk about who can use BTRFS Snapshots. So to use BTRFS Snapshots, you need a BTRFS file system. And so most of the J models, those cheaper models from Synology, do not have BTRFS. And some of the really older Plus models also do not have BTRFS. But if you have a somewhat modern plus model, you almost certainly have the option for BTRFS. Now, when you're building your first volume, especially if you did this on DSM-6, on DSM-7 they really push you to BTRFS, but back in the day on DSM-6 it was quite common to, hey, I actually want to do ext4 instead of BTRFS, because they didn't really push you as much as they should have to BTRFS. So if you currently have an ext4 file system, you unfortunately cannot easily just switch it on over to BTRFS. The best way I found to do this is honestly to back everything up using Hyper Backup and do a second backup of all of your really crucial photos and everything you cannot live without. Format your NAS, reinstall it with BTRFS, and then put everything back on. It is a huge pain, and I actually had to go through it myself because when I first started out, I started out with ext4 and had to switch over. But if you have the ability to do it and it's not a huge deal, I would highly recommend it. It is well worth it because of how great these features are and how much BTRFS can protect your data. All right, and so now with that out of the way, let's talk about what BTRFS snapshots are in general. So BTRFS snapshots are part of the BTRFS file system, which is a copy on write file system. You can think of them very similar to ZFS snapshots. They really work almost exactly the same. And so essentially what a snapshot is a snapshot uses the really cool features of a copy on write file system to essentially only have to store deltas to restore any previous version of a file. So what that means is, say you edit a document. Instead of just totally deleting the document and saving it somewhere else, which is what normal file systems do, BTRFS instead just goes, okay, the document's the same thing as it was, just with this little change. And so instead of deleting the original document, it'll just save that little change in a separate part of the disk. And once that thing has been written to the disk, it'll say, okay, next time you ask for that document, we're going to send him the original data, except for that part that changed. When he gets that part that changed, we'll send him to the new location. But with BTRFS snapshots, that original section of data that changed isn't deleted quite yet. Instead, it sticks around until the last snapshot that's using it is removed. And so because of that, you are able to browse exactly how your file system was, binarily exactly how your file system was, at any time by just referencing those old data pointers. And so it is so powerful and protects you from so much stuff while being incredibly lightweight. They're as lightweight as it gets without doing full-blown deduplication. It is absolutely awesome and one of the most useful features out there. I recommend every single Synology user implement BTRFS snapshots if they're able to. So for a more simplified explanation and what really I think helps a lot of people understand how BTRFS snapshots work, especially when it comes to space, is think of them just like the recycling bin on your computer. Generally, when you delete a file on your computer, it is not immediately gone. Instead, when you hit delete, it actually sends it to the recycling bin, right? And so you do not immediately get your space back because that file is not actually gone. It's just now in the recycling bin. And so until you empty the recycling bin, you do not get any space back. And that is exactly how BTRFS snapshots work. And so if I take a snapshot and then I delete a file, that snapshot is holding on to the data of that file, because if it removes the data from that file, your NAS now no longer knows what it is and can't restore from it. So as long as that snapshot exists, that snapshot is going to hold on to that data until it is deleted. So essentially, your file system will keep that data on disk, meaning you won't get the space back, until the very last snapshot that's referencing that data is removed. And so that's exactly how the recycling bin works. Your computer does not give you your space back until the recycling bin is emptied. They're very much the same way. And so essentially what you can think of BTRFS snapshots is it's just a recycling bin that is way better than any other recycling bin you've ever seen. It is great for that because it also allows changes. So normally if you just change a document, it's not going to end up in the recycling bin because you didn't delete the document, you just changed it. With BTRFS, you actually get to have that old version of the document. That's really the only difference. But that's how you should think about this when you're thinking about space. All right, and so now let's finally go in and let's open up snapshots. So you can download the package from the package center and it will download snapshot replication. There's two parts to snapshots. There's snapshots locally and snapshots replicated. For the most part of this video, we're going to be talking about local snapshots, But replicated snapshots are absolutely awesome, and they're a crucial part of an advanced 3-2-1 backup solution for businesses that I set up quite often. So when you open this up, the very first time, you're likely to see a message that say, hey, your file system has access times enabled. You should disable that for peak performance. So access time is something that some people use, but the vast majority of people never actually use. Essentially what it is every single time you open a file, the file system will log, hey, this file was last opened at this time. It's useful for some things. Say you want to figure out what documents have not been used in a while or opened. You can do things like that. But in reality, not that many people ever use it, so it's not that necessary. But it can actually hinder you, because every single time you open a file, you're now changing the file. Most of the time when you open a file, you're just reading it, so you don't actually change it. But now when you're opening a file, you're actually changing it. And so that forces BTRFS to monitor so many more changes than necessary. And so because of that, the first time you open snapshots, it'll tell you, hey, you probably want to remove those. And I actually recommend most people remove access time unless they need it. And the way you do that is very simple. You just go ahead and open up your storage manager. You go into your volume, and we are going to go into the volume right here and do some settings. And under record file access time, we'll just say never. And that's all you have to do. Now, you'll never have to worry about that, and BTRFS will be more performant when it comes to snapshots. For small file systems, don't worry about it if you find a use for it. But for large businesses who have thousands and thousands of files being opened every single day, it can actually be a very big performance hit by having to have all these extra complex snapshots that are actually completely useless because the file was not changed, it was just the access time was changed. But I recommend turning that off for most people. All right, and so now on to snapshots. So the first thing you're going to notice is this pane called snapshots. This is where the vast majority of regular users are going to spend all of their time. Snapshots have a few different schedules that I'm going to talk about here, but the vast majority of people are going to focus on shared folder snapshots. There's also LUN for people who are using iSCSI. You can also snapshot those. But for the vast majority of people, you're going to be using shared folders. And you pretty much should enable snapshots on every single shared folder, in my opinion, except for like one case that I know of. The only case that I really know of that you should not have snapshots enabled for is if you have a security camera system and you are absolutely on kind of the performance brink of your NAS. So if your disk utilization is over like 40% just standard recording, BTRFS snapshots might push it over the edge, having to snapshot all of those changes every single time. And so I might not use snapshots there. Maybe you take them once a day and you might get a bit of a performance hit there, but that's kind of the only use case where I see not taking snapshots as being useful. And so instead, the question you should be asking yourself is, 1, how often should I be using snapshots? And 2, how long should I keep snapshots? So let's just go ahead and open up a random new shared folder. We'll open up this photo one right here, and we're going to set up snapshot settings on them. By the way, real useful feature, if you shift select, you can edit multiple shared folder sections all at the exact same time. Super useful. But we're just going to edit this one called photo. So we're just going to go into settings, and we can see I've not yet enabled the snapshot schedule here. And so we can enable it, and now we get to choose what days it runs and how often it runs. So for people who are just using it like photos right here, photos, if for whatever reason happened and I lost the past 7 hours of edits to photos because something crucial happened, that would not be the end of the world for me. So daily probably makes sense. You can also say I only want to run it on certain times, but for most people, daily or maybe every 4 hours is quite good. If you are a business and you really need up to date, you can do snapshots every single 5 minutes. Now, I do recommend having some pretty performant disks for this and a more performant model, but the ability to take a snapshot every single 5 minutes and restore from for a business can be very useful, especially if you're replicating those snapshots with an A/B setup. It's very useful, but you've got a ton of options here. Just note, if you're doing under an hour, make sure you've got the performance to handle that, because I have seen it kind of stall out, and you don't want it causing stall out if you're never going to use snapshots that granularity. So to keep things simple, we'll just go ahead and take a snapshot every single day. All right, and so that answers the very first question. How often should you use snapshots? It really comes down to how much granularity you need for the restore options. The next question is, how long should you keep them? This is by far the most important question. Essentially what you're answering here is from the moment you delete a file, so the moment you hit a space back, how long should that be? You can kind of think it like a recycling bin that automatically empties itself after 30 days. So what I often like to do is set up a policy that is keep the last snapshot of the hour for 24 hours, makes sense. And then we'll just do dailies for the past 7 days. Then we'll say we have a copy of the file system for the past 4 weeks. Pretty much if I have to restore something from over a week, I'm not gonna get crazy great granularity, but it's been a while, so I probably don't need that. So this is probably good for most people because it's pretty likely that from the moment there's an issue, it's going to be figured out within probably 7 days. And then the 4 weeks there is just useful in case anything does happen. Now, if you're never deleting stuff and you really just want to make sure that if anything does happen, you've got a lot of points to back up from, you can increase this to like 8 weeks. And if you're never really deleting stuff or changing things and you're just kind of adding stuff in, think like a photo archive, this is really not going to take up much space at all because you're not changing files, you're only adding files. And snapshots only hold on to files that have been changed or deleted. And so 8 weeks for a file system that's pretty much only adding in data is probably not going to take up much storage at all. Then the last thing down here is snapshots automatically keep a certain number of snapshots before applying these rules. That way, if for whatever reason it stops taking snapshots or anything like that and there's a glitch, you know you at least have some snapshots. And so in this case, it will only remove snapshots if there's at least 5 snapshots accessible. And then after that, it'll go through and look at these rules and try to find snapshots that exceed these rules. And so maybe you have 2 snapshots from 3 days ago. And so if you look down here, we can see that, okay, well, it's been past 1 day, so I don't need to keep it. It's been past 24 hours, so I don't need to keep it from this rule. I already have 1 snapshot from that day, so I don't need this rule. And so there, it's like, okay, it has not been required from all these rules. It is now safe to remove. And so that's how it works. And so if you look actually right here, this second setting right here is redundant because 24 hours is 1 day, and therefore automatically all my snapshots are going to be kept for 1 day. And so these two kind of are redundant here. So you can add extra granularity here. You're probably only custom using this one is if you're using those advanced ones that are under 1 hour. And so that is how snapshots work. I will warn you, if you keep a snapshot for a year, you're pretty much never going to get space back from deleted files. Now, if that's your setup, more power to you. You just know you've got them. But I very rarely ever enable these two unless there's a very small file system that people just want to make sure they've got a lot of archive. So it's almost like a, hey, this client's totally built out, we're good, I'm fine deleting it. But if a year from now I hear from them and they really want me, and it might be nice if I could possibly restore from that. You shouldn't really rely on these, but as a, hey, can't hurt, you can. I still recommend probably never use anything over a month. I would really just focus on weekly at that point. That's at least my opinion. All right, so now we've got the rules figured out. So now let's look at some advanced configuration. And by far the most useful one of these is going to be make snapshot visible. Now note, this setting is not available if you've encrypted the shared folder, unfortunately, but make snapshot visible is so cool. And so I've been in a big company before, and it sucks trying to deal with IT to get an old copy of a file. The majority of the time, even though there's almost certainly a backup of the file system that's probably easy for IT to access, it's probably easier for me not to deal with IT and instead just remake the document because it's such a pain. You've got to set up a ticket, everything, just to get back a couple hours of work. It's probably going to take you more time in dealing with somebody else than it would to just redo the work. Making snapshots visible can completely remove that. So by making snapshots visible, it creates a read-only folder called #snapshots, #snapshots, in the shared folder. And I'm going to show that here in a minute. But what that allows you to do is that allows all of your regular users to browse the old copies of files, the old snapshots, and grab the documents themselves. The beauty of them is they're read-only. So there's nothing they can do to remove these files. Now, the one thing to think about is if somebody deletes sensitive data, it's not actually deleted because it's still in snapshots. And so if that ever did happen, you would want to make sure that either the snapshots were removed, or if they really should not be removed, maybe you make the snapshot folder not visible anymore. That is one thing to think about if you do not want your employees to have a history of all the files on the file system. All right, and so now let's show this in action. I'm going to be using this family shared folder right here. First thing is we'll look at the snapshot list, and we can see we've got a few snapshots already here. And so now I've just connected it over here using SMB. And so as you can see right here, we've got the recycling bin, but there's no snapshot folder. So now let's just go in and enable that under Settings, Advanced, Make Snapshot Visible. And so now, right here, we've got the snapshot folder. So we can see out all the different versions of this file system exactly how they were at these times. And so now let's kind of see this in action, because right now, this is just my test bench, so nothing's changed on it in a while. So now let's say that we want to add this new folder. Very important data. And we're going to go in and add in a new text edit. New document. I don't know. There we go. Very important. We've got a client meeting at noon. We've got to make sure to make it. But now, let's say something happens. So we're just going to demo how this works. So we're just going to go ahead and take a snapshot. By the way, this lock command right here means that it will not be removed automatically by snapshots. So this is very useful if you want to make sure you've got an exact copy of the file system before you make some major changes. Just make sure to unlock it unless you want that space to literally always be there. All right, so we just took a snapshot. More likely than not, it's just an automatic snapshot that happens. So we've got this snapshot now. All right, well now, let's say this gets somehow corrupted, right? Who knows what happens? Maybe somebody deletes it, who knows? And we don't know where it is. We can just go in as a regular user. I'm currently logged in as a regular user, and we can just open up the snapshot folder. All right, well, we'll just go to the one today. And let's open up secret stuff. And see, this is the exact file as it was when it was taken. Even better, let's try to edit it. So we just changed it some. We can see that that file is read-only. All of these snapshots are read-only. And so that means you don't have to worry about employees messing up the backups, not backups, but the copies of your data, because they can't edit them. They can only read them. So we will just have to revert it. And so now we say, okay, we know that this is the version of the file we actually want. All we have to do is go ahead and drag it from the snapshot back into the future. We're going to replace it. And we've just copied and pasted it in there. And so now it's just like it was never gone. It is that easy to use these things. And it is so valuable for everything you need. It is so nice for IT never to have to get involved and just be able to go back to previous versions of files. All right, and so now let's say that something crucial happened. Let's say that we got attacked. Somebody got ransomware and one of the computers got encrypted. And so let's say they, I don't know. So say they took all of our data and encrypted it. All right, so the one thing is, this is where my space reports are, so I can't actually edit this file as a user. But hey, we've been ransomwared, oh no. So now, instead of forcing us to either restore from a backup, which we might not have, you should definitely back up your stuff, but a lot of people don't, or pay for the ransomware, instead what we're able to do is just roll back the file system. Now, this is going to be something you should only do in the event of true like, okay, I know I just need to blow away everything. You've got kind of two options here. So what you can do is you can go into the recovery menu and we can recover it. And we'll say that this is the last good snapshot. We probably should browse to it first. So we'll check it out, make sure everything's where we want it, everything's good. And then what we're gonna do is we can either clone with a new name or restore to the snapshot. Restore to the snapshot is very decisive. It blows away whatever's currently there. And now, boom, on top of that is the current snapshot. If you've been ransomware or something and you know you've got a good copy of your data, this is okay to do. But what is safer to do is clone with a new name. So clone with a new name lets you kind of put it in parallel, and that way you don't blow away the current snapshot. But we know for a fact that we are good, so we're just going to blow this thing away, and we're going to do a total restore. Now, the nice thing they do is they have this right here where you take a snapshot before restoring. Unless you're like really running low on data or something, you should definitely do that. Just in case there's something you missed. You don't want to completely blow this thing away and then not have it if you ever needed it. And then if you've got some very specific shared folder permissions, that's pretty much the only thing here. You can also restore to that. Up to you, probably should do both. We're just gonna go ahead and do it. All right, and so now let's just go ahead and open up that folder again. And immediately we can see this is exactly how the folder was before we got ransomwared. Now, the other thing is we can go in and we can still see that ransomware file if we ever need it for whatever reason, who knows, but we are safe on that. And that is how easy snapshots are. So those are the really big hitters. Now let's talk about a couple of things that are useful for kind of figuring out the space side of things. So snapshots can take up a lot of space. Looking at Hyper Backup Vault, that will take up a lot of space with snapshots. I would recommend taking weekly snapshots for that, for however long you'd like to. Same thing with Time Machine. Those are things that change very small files, but tons of them all over. And so when you're taking snapshots, it can kind of take up a lot of space. And so I recommend keeping only like weekly versions of those for most people. So anything like that that's constantly changing slight files and that you probably don't need crazy granularity for, you should really look at having like weekly snapshots for, and maybe only keeping them for like 4 weeks. All right, and so now let's talk about how to get space back immediately. That's the nice thing about this is you know you can always get your space back whenever you need it. So say you know, okay, I've had to clean out my NAS because I've got only like a terabyte of space left. We're running low, and I know the file system is good. I know I don't need that data anymore. I need the space though. We can just go into Family, Snapshots, List, select them all. Remember, this is going to blow away all previous versions of files. You're still going to have all of your files in there, but you're not going to have the snapshots of them. And remove. And this will instantly, you can see up here, we are now getting our space back. This is running a space reclamation. And so you can immediately get space back from snapshots should you ever need to. Another thing you can do is, say you don't know where all your space is going, you can go in here and calculate the size of snapshots. So it will go through and it will look at all the previous versions of files, and it will tell you. I will say for massive file systems and a lot of snapshots, this can take hours, but it will very quickly show you, hey, this is how much space these snapshots are using. And so if you're trying to get space back and you're like, okay, where can I just grab space back? This is very useful. All right, and so now one other thing I did want to mention is, say you stop taking snapshots on a folder, that does not mean the snapshots are removed. So go into recovery, and this will show you where all of your snapshots are. So say you stopped taking snapshots a couple of months ago because this folder you just don't care about that much, it's constantly changing, it's just taking up a lot of data, whatever reason, but you stopped the snapshot task, you never deleted the old snapshots. So this is where you will see every single folder that has snapshots in it, and you can recover from them there. All right, well, that's pretty much all I've got for you. Snapshots are a tool that every single BTRFS NAS should be using because they can save you so much hassle and headache, and it just gives you peace of mind in knowing that if you need to, you can go back from stupid changes. It is such a nice thing to have, and they just run in the background beautifully. Go ahead and leave any other tutorials you'd like to see me make in the comments below. And if you'd like to hire me for a project, I've got a link for that in the description as well. All right, have a good one. Bye.